All right, so now we can start creating our URLs and views. And to do that, we'll want to create something called a Django app. And so Django projects are consisting of one project, in our case config, and then one or more Django apps. And there's no hard rule how to create apps or structure them or how many apps a project needs. They're kind of flexible. And the reason that you would make multiple apps is so that you can separate your concerns. So you could have each app deal with one functionality, like an app for users to register and sign up and so on. And they're also portable. So if you wanted to create an app for users to help them log in this project and then move it over into another project that you start, you could more easily copy and paste them over if it was in its own app than if it was just mixed in with the rest of the project. But again, there's no hard rule. But to create an app, we'll use this manage.py file, some of the commands that come with it. So we'll type python manage.py start app, then the name of the app, my app. And you can see that it creates this folder, my app, with some files that are common across most Django apps to help us speed up our development. And now whenever we create a new app, we have to go into our project folder, settings.py, which have a lot of configurations about our overall project, one of them being installed apps, which is a list of installed apps. And it comes pre-configured with some Django apps that are common across projects. And all we have to do is add to the list a string with the name of our app. So my app, and add a trailing comma just to be safe. Go ahead and save that. Close that. We can pull back up our terminal and run the server again. So python manage.py run server to make sure everything is working still. If we refresh this, beautiful, we can see everything is still working. So now let's go ahead and create a view. To do that, we can go back to our code, close the terminal, and in our app, we have a views.py file. So this is where our views will go. And a view is just a Python function or class. Right now, we'll be focusing on function-based views. Later on, we'll talk about class-based views. So all we have to do is define a Python function. We'll call it index since it'll be the home view. And it takes in the request. And the request is an object coming from the user on the website. In our restaurant example, it was similar to the person going up to the counter and placing their order. And that request was transferred over to the chef, who then made the food and delivered the food to the user. In the Django project, the request comes from the end user. The URL receives it, and then it passes it over to the view. And it just contains information about the user on your site. And so all we have to do is return something. So we can just return some text. So we could return, and we're going to use something called an HTTP response. An HTTP response will just return some text to the user. So we can just pass it a string, hello world, in classic programming fashion. And now we're seeing this error because we have to import this from Django. So we can copy this, and from Django.shortcuts, next to render, we can import HTTP response and save that. So perfect. So this is our first view. It's called index, and it returns an HTTP response that returns some text, hello world. But now we have to tell Django, when should we call this function? And in our project, there is a urls.py file. And this is where we tell Django the path on our site to call which view. And so you can see that it comes pre-configured with a lot of text explaining how they work. And I do recommend checking out the Django docs as they're very thorough. But if we scroll down here, we can see a variable called URL patterns, which is a list of paths. And each path is a URL and view pair. So we'll want to add another path to this list. So we'll type path. And the first argument is a string containing the URL. So this could be /about for the about route. It could be /profile for the profile page. It could be /blog. In our case, we'll just leave it an empty string because this will be the home route. And then the second argument is the actual view to fire, to run. And ours is called index. And then we can add a trailing comma. And we're getting this error because we need to import it. So we can go up to the top. We could say from my app.views import index. and save that. And this URL patterns variable and this path is basically saying, okay, when the user goes to mysite.com/, then we want to run the index function, which returns hello world. So let's see it in action. So if we make sure that our server is still running, and we go back to the browser, and we refresh the page, boom, we see hello world. Amazing. So now we're actually returning custom data. So the next thing we're going to look at is how to return dynamic data. And that's what we'll touch on in the next video.